At a recent event hosted by Testnet, the premier professional organization for software testers in the Netherlands, our very own VP of Product Development, Andreas Prins, presented on the state of software testing in a world of modern application development. Continue watching to see the full presentation.
So where Derek Jan focused really in the beginning of the evening on the people as well as the let's say the process side of agile testing and testing in, well, let's say the current time we're living in now, as well as towards the future for most of the companies, I really want to take a different approach. So my talk is really about the test automation, if you want to put it like this, but actually it's a kind of much deeper than just test automation. It's everything which is around delivering software towards production, which can be automated. And that's more than just the testing aspects. So I'm Andreas Prins, I'm working for XebiaLabs. Who of you know XebiaLabs? Yes, a few hands. Who of you know Xebia? Because most of the Dutch people know Xebia, or Xebia, how we pronounce it in Dutch, sorry, Xebia, who knows Xebia? Well, Xebia originally started as one of the business units from, XebiaLabs started as one of the business units from Xebia, and is now an independent company, so we're also an American company, so that's why I have a fancy title. So I was preparing the presentation just 2 days after I came back from the beach with my wife. So we parked 4 of our kids with a nanny, and the 2 of us took 3 days, which is a kind of nice because you really can get new ideas when your wife is reading a book or your partner is reading a book. And that's a kind of refreshing because you take it from a little distance. And then I'm thinking, great, if I have to divide the whole spectrum of testing or quality or whatever the process from your developer machine all the way to production into certain buckets, how would I define these buckets? And then I was thinking, well, most likely it's a kind of waves, yeah? So there are really short, intense waves, then there are kind of, well, let's say middle long waves, which are crossing a few months, a few weeks, or for some organizations even longer, and there are these ultra long waves which are just going on over time. And I thought, well, let's split up the talk in these kind of 3 boxes and 3 areas, 3 types of waves, which we will discover tonight, which are really impacting the work we do these days. And if you ask me about how do you want to develop your software in this era where a lot of Jenkins, pipelines, continuous delivery, whatever modern words are going around, I do think tonight we can dive into that, and I can give you an example of how you can potentially set up your testing, your quality, and your delivery of your software. But before going in there, just set the scene. Yeah, so it was another weekend, it was a weekend later, we were back at the beach and my kids were playing outside and I was sitting there and I said, okay, this is a nice picture because this is really describing where you're looking at. So today I want to take you towards a journey or on a journey where we have a big enterprise in mind. Yeah, so imagine you're working here in the Netherlands for a big bank or an insurance company or a government organization, and this is a kind of the typical pattern. So many teams, many roles, many responsibilities distributed over a lot of people in your organization. And in many of the organizations in the Netherlands, there is the need to speed up the application delivery. We want to go faster. And I do think that's there for ages already, but with Agile and DevOps, a lot of managers think they understand where to go to and they want to go faster. So test automation and continuous delivery are 2 of the ingredients you can use. Not to forget all the ingredients that Derek Jan was giving us in the earlier talk, where you really talk about teaming, collaboration, working together, and process optimization. And as you can imagine, if you want to do continuous delivery in a highly regulated environment, so if you really want to push your code all the way to production with just 1 click on the button, you also have to do something with security and compliancy. And, which is also important, if you ship customer software or software towards customers which is hard to update. So I'm working at a product organization, so you cannot ship every 3 minutes a new version of your product. So you have to try, at least you have to do the uttermost best to deliver good software first time right, because patching every day is a kind of hard. So this is the view from the beach, and then the sandcastle itself, yeah? So if you start with the shells on the tower, on the top of the tower, that doesn't work, because if there's no tower or if there's no foundation under the tower, there is no tower to put that shell on top of. And if you talk about continuous delivery and moving towards that modern software development practices, you also should not start with the shells on the top of your tower of your sandcastle. And that's what we want to discover. So going towards building a sandcastle, or the process of building a sandcastle, you know that as well as a kid, and believe me, it's still fun to do if you are with kids or if you see kids at the beach build a sandcastle, because it's really stimulating your creativity. And if you're doing so, you need to practice, yeah, because the first time you make these walls and they're not so nice, and then you take different sand and different water and whatever, and time after time your sandcastle becomes nicer and nicer. And I do believe if you really want to improve your practices of software development, it's exactly the same. You don't start with the perfect castle, but you should strive for it. And if that is your goal, to build a perfect castle, even with LED lights inside, that's awesome, yeah? But it requires a lot of perseverance to get there over time. So now the question is, what are these waves that are disrupting, the sandcastle, or that are disrupting, I do think, our lives as software engineers, as testers, as the people who are responsible and working in the area of software development. And the first one, and let's call them Jenkins, and probably you have a little other CI tool. Who's working with Jenkins, or Jenkins is used in your organization? Okay. Another CI tool? Which one? FaceTS? TFS, close. Yeah, so there are many of these CI tools, but indeed these and a few others are really the most well-known continuous integrations tool. And in these tools, you can really build nice build pipelines. So let me give you an example, because it's really important to understand, if you really want to automate as much as possible, you have to start at the lowest levels. Yeah, because if you really start automating your GUI test or your interface, right, your graphical interface testing first, it requires a lot of effort. So what you have to do is really start working with test automation at the lowest level. And this is just an example which is running in our own team. So this is one of the build pipelines we do have. And what you can see in here, and I will elaborate a little bit on it, there are API tests running. Yeah, there are many, many API tests. So actually all APIs are tested always in an automated way with many differences. The second big piece, which is really important to test, is your GUI test, and you can test it on a really low level. So with Cypress and with other frameworks, you can do a lot of GUI testing, but then from a Jenkins CI point of view. What you can find in here as well, and I'm just standing over here because otherwise it's really horrible. So what you can find in here is also the LDAP integration, so the integrations with your access management systems, because that's really important for the software we deliver towards our customers. And since it's so important, because you have to deliver secure software, it needs to be part of the integrated total package of testing. You can find plugin tests, so we set up a lot of plugins and we test the integration with a lot of plugins. And this is happening in our Jenkins process. And if you ask how often is this process running, it's running, I don't know, 100 times a day or probably even more. So every time when we merge something into a feature branch or into the master branch, this process is triggered automatically. Nobody is looking at it as long as it's green, and as soon as it's red, people are alerted and they start working on it. What is the type of people that are working on it? These are the development engineers, or the engineers, or how do you want to call them. So this is really their responsibility to build the software, including all the tests that are needed to go there. As well as they have to put everything on the version control, because it's just regular code. Yeah, if you want to develop these modern practices, you also have to work with version control, and you have to put all your test cases and your test evidence under version control. Well, and this is running many, many times. Yeah, so, well, let's say there are 10 different build pipelines in our organization, and there are 100 or 70 developers. So you can imagine how often these build pipelines are triggered. So it's running, there's a whole bunch of machines running with Jenkins, and well, this is happening. And this is happening at the lowest level, and this is running the most often. Then the second part, which is, I do think, really important, and it's taking a lot of manual work away, so the labor-intense work, I do think can be automated as well. So in addition to unit testing, integration testing, and some, well, let's call it system checking, next to that you can automate a lot of stuff. So let's have a look at how we do this. So this is an example, what we call the nightly build pipeline. And for people who are sitting at the first row, I do think you can perfectly read what's on this sheet. No, I'm kidding. But what I want to do, why I'm presenting this, is because I want to show you actually how long the testing column is, and we dive into the details a little later, how long that testing cycle is we run every night. And why is it needed to do it every night? Is because you want to have the feedback as fast as possible. Yeah, so the build is really the quickest and the fastest cycle. As soon as you merge, you go for a coffee, you come back and you know how your code is behaving in the bigger picture. And this is really focusing on integration. So when all developers and all teams merge their code, this is what's happening every night. So it's scheduled. And what we do is we do a build. So we send out some notifications to HipChat or to Slack or to any other messaging system you use. And then this is for XO Release, one of our products. We create the base, we create all the plugins, and then we merge the plugins. So we really have a rich product. So we have the base of the product, including all the plugins. And that is a alpha release. We publish that alpha release, and then we start installing it on many environments. Every night on a fresh environment or on an updated environment. So what we do is we install it at the nightly environment, we install it at the user acceptance environment, a security, a performance environment, and as soon as everything is installed, then the whole testing cycle starts. And why is this so important? Because we have to practice not only the testing, we have not only to test the software itself, we also have to practice the installation procedures as well as the upgrade procedures. Because this is what our customers are doing as well. They struggle with these things and they have to have a good quality code. So every night what we do is we take the latest versions we ship to our customers and we try to upgrade it from the alpha we have created a minute before. And we could do it for the latest version, the previous one, and the one before. And then in the most right column, the red one, for the people who are not colorblind, you can see the quality assurance phase. And everything again, or almost everything again, is automated. So we release the software and then we start testing the security. So we do 45 scanning here, static code analysis, as well as some OWASP test where we do a lot of, well, a little dynamic, but also primarily static testing. What we do is we do a lot of stress testing or performance testing. I would call it performance testing because we're not breaking the system during the night, but we do want to see how it's behaving under certain load and whether or not we see a difference with the night before. And then clicking through because the column was so long, so we still continue with the, in the middle column with the quality assurance. So as I mentioned, we also do test the upgrade procedure every night. And this is really valuable feedback because sometimes the software can work properly, but if it's breaking the upgrade procedure for our customers, it's horrible as well. Yeah, so we introduced that lately. And then continuing on the last column, what we do there is we also start testing with all the plugins. So we did it throughout the day whether or not the code is integrating nicely, and throughout the night we test it again and we run actual examples of, well, test cases through our plugins. So as you can imagine, it's a kind of time consuming to set it up. Yeah? So building a pipeline like this really requires a lot of time and a lot of effort. And again, there are not so many testers, as in a sense, manual testers involved in our organization. So we really want to do it with the test engineers we do have. So all the stress tests, all the security tests, the frameworks we do use are built or configured by development engineers. And why did we choose, and that's really important, that's really a distinction, why did we choose for a tool like XO Release, not only because it's our own product and we want to use it, but the reason why we used it is because there's a lot of data collection in the back going on. And all of our customers use this tool, and I will come back to it later, because you also want to harvest all your test evidence you do have, and you want to discover trends and these kind of things. As well as you want to make it visible, and that's why I do think it's more powerful than Jenkins, which is doing the CI. If you really want to do the whole end-to-end release, you also want to make it visual for your release managers, for your risk managers, for your department managers, or for whatever person you have. And then if you have to point everybody towards Jenkins, it's not that useful because there's much more than just Jenkins, like a complex process like this, and more to come in the sheets after. And then you can ask the question, or you can raise the question, okay, but most of the things you have automated during the night, why are you not pushing them towards the day? Why are you not pushing them towards 100 times or even 300 times a day? Well, that's a kind of balance, because the whole nightly cycle takes, I do think, around 3-4 hours, sometimes even longer. And pushing that into your feedback cycle you want to have as soon as somebody is merging the code in a branch is really difficult, yeah, because every merge then takes 4 hours or whatever, and then imagine how much resources it will take. So you can argue, well, then optimize your testing. Well, I do think there's a kind of a balance. So that's one reason, as well as a really other important reason is sometimes some testing only makes sense if all pieces come together. So imagine you have a couple of development teams working on the core, on the base of the product, and people are building modules or extension on top of it. Some testing only makes sense if you bundle it all together as you were shipping it towards your customer and test it in a total package. So that is the reason why some of the tests are still executed during nighttime. They're time consuming, as well as it only makes sense if they're bundled. And then the third wave, which is also a daily activity, since we now can produce every night a fresh environment, yeah, because we have it automated, it's really useful as well to do a daily check to see if some scenarios are there, or, well, whatever you want to do during the day. And why it's also really useful is because product managers can always demo the latest and the greatest feature. Yeah? So instead of diving into the code and see how far we are, or diving into Jira, every night or every day when you come in the morning, there's a new environment available where you can just go through it, discover, and if needed, manually test some items there. So this is what's happening every day, and this is what I do advise if you really want to go towards continuous delivery, which is the usage of all the tools. This should be, or this can be, an approach you can use in your teams. Make sense? Yes? Okay, nice. So now it's getting more difficult, yeah, because this is just what you do in your daily activities. And now the question is, or what you can do during the day. And now the question is, if we go to the longer waves, what else is needed? What else is needed if you... So, can I do it without? Can you hear me in the back? Yes? Perfect. So then the question is, what else is needed if you want to push your software towards your customers? Yeah, because you have a lot of stuff automated and you have fast feedback cycles, but then the question is raising, are there still many or are there still any manual tests required? Real life testing, exploratory testing, I don't know how you want to label them. And I do think the answer is yes. Not as much as you're probably used to do, because a lot of stuff can be automated, but before pushing it towards to your customers, there's absolutely a need to just see it, to feel it, to go into all the different areas of the application. Or probably because it's too time consuming to automate, test a variety of browsers, database connections, or whatever is influencing the risk of your application. So at the end of every cycle, and I don't know what your cycle is, we ship every 2 months, so we ship 6 product releases a year. So at the end, before we ship it to the customers, there's a little hardening cycle where not the testers are testing, because we only have one, but where every engineer, where the product managers and all other people, even UX team, are testing to see, how is the application behaving in real life. And yes, sometimes you're writing down many test cases which can be automated the release after. So it's a continuous cycle there as well. And another wave, which is happening every release, every half year, and a little bit depends on what you can do more or in a longer period of time, are the performance testing and the security testing. Because it's really cool that you have some of the tests automated during the night. So security testing, for example, where you check on SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and all these kind of low-hanging fruit vulnerabilities. And at the same time doing a real penetration test requires something different than just a couple of silly tools who are running on top of your application. So my suggestion is, if you want to do it, you can do a lot in an automated way. Because SQL injection, if a developer is programming in the wrong way or whatever, you really want to have that fast feedback cycle, so he's learning how to do input validation and these kind of things. So it needs to be there in your daily cycle. It needs to be there in your nightly cycle, because 45 scans or other static code analysis scans take time. And on top of that, there's a big need, in our opinion, to do penetration testing or security testing from a manual point of view. So there's still tools involved, but there's also a big piece of human knowledge. And also important to take, well, in your nightly cycle or once when you ship it, is the third-party library scanning. Because a lot of frameworks, development frameworks, bringing a lot of libraries, yeah? So they're just for free included. So you have to do a couple of things. First of all, check them on the type of license. Yeah? So if you're selling a product or if you're building a product, are you actually allowed to use certain libraries? Do they have the right license type? It's also a type of testing. As well as, are there known vulnerabilities in these third-party libraries? Yeah, because if they are, then you probably have to use another one, upgrade it, or whatever. So if you're shipping software towards your customer, that's at least what we do. Before we ship it, we do this evaluation and we send it out to the customers. And performance testing is also really important. So you can do it throughout the night to see if there's a little difference in how the application is behaving. But once in a while, you really have to stress your application, and you want to stress to see where it breaks, how it is behaving, discover patterns, analyze how the application is behaving. And again, it's not that simple, so you really require deep technical knowledge to do this. And important, using realistic user scenarios is helping you to really find the right patterns. And then the third one, which is probably the most interesting so we now shipped it to the customers. Yeah, so we did some security testing, performance testing, we produce a release, and we ship it to the customer. So that's good. But now, most likely, the most important test, which is often not executed, is the value validation check. I don't know if it's the right title, I just came up with it. But what we have to do much more often, if we deliver a feature towards our customers or towards our users, does it actually deliver the value? And that's a really important question, guys, because if we are working on software which is not adding value, or which is not adding the right value we had intended up front, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of energy, and all your testing and development capacity, is useless. So, I don't know which instrument you are using, minimal viable product, lean canvas, I don't know, there are many of these instruments where you determine up front what is the value, what is the feature I want to deliver, and how is it impacting my customers. It's a little more than just a Jira or a VSTS user story ticket. It's really together with your product managers, thinking up front, what is the value I do want to deliver with a new feature or even with a whole new system. And the funny thing by doing these exercises, and if you're involved in doing these exercises, you already discover where are the biggest risks. Yeah, because if the product manager is introducing a brand new feature on new technology which is running on the cloud with software underneath you've never used before, all alarm bells should start ringing, because you have to do a lot of work. You have to change your continuous delivery pipeline, your CI cycle, you have to learn new frameworks, as well as set up a whole new bunch of testing in every stage. So being involved in the early stages in the lean canvas or the business canvas or the MVP brainstorming sessions helps you to better understand what you have to do throughout the development cycle. And you can argue whether or not building software and only shipping it once every 2 months is continuous delivery. I do think it is, because you have to split the moment of delivery from how you develop software. So with your alpha we produce every night, you have a potentially shippable product. At least you do have the value or the feedback loop built in to your product. And then a lean canvas can only be executed at the beginning and a reflection on it at the end of your cycle. Who of you is doing these kind of exercises to check on the value? Did we deliver what we intend to deliver? 1, 2, 3. It's a kind of difficult, is it? To do it, because how do you express value? what is value? Yeah? Is it more customers? Is it less clicks to go to the end result? Is it, I don't know, more satisfaction? But at least starting these conversations really help you to determine the priority, yeah, because development capacity is always limited, as well as it helps you to understand, okay, where are we actually looking for and what is our dot on the horizon we want to strive for. And then another nice feedback loop. Well, we call it the user panel. So if you're shipping software, and some web applications have a feedback button, yeah, so these horrible web shops which always have a pop-up with the chatbot and then another overlay with the feedback, yeah, is it kind of interesting as well, because you actually want to know how are they using it, yeah, or what is their perception? Is it not too difficult? Do they understand the new features? Are they using the features as we have intended them? So these are all questions you can test and you can verify with your user panel. I promise you in the beginning, there's much more testing than we think there is. And for me, this is absolutely testing. And this is absolutely what we have to do. Because building features that are not used or people don't understand is a waste of money and a waste of time. So, the long waves together, in my opinion, cover what is needed to ship your product towards your customer. Whether or not it's from a quality point of view, from a non-functional requirements point of view. Pronouncing it correct? Yeah, I'm looking to you. Non-functional requirements? Yeah? Okay. Yeah? Thank you. These, as well as checking whether or not you deliver value, is really important to do. And then going to the, well, I would call it the most difficult, as well as you can doubt whether or not they're really interesting. So these are the ultra long waves, but they're so crucial and so needed if you really want to strive for continuous delivery. You really have to think upfront, how am I gathering all my evidence? Because if you're not gathering your evidence and the auditor is coming in, yeah, you get a fine, you get a penalty, and he's not happy. You have to do it over again. And in the early days, you still probably know, we have these big cabinets with all these files in it, and they ask you, yeah, can you prove what was in that particular change request? Yeah, and then you walk to the big cabinet and you were searching on date, picking a certain file, and then you were showing, yeah, this was, and who did sign it? Yeah, because the signature was really important, because we have to have the 4I principle and these kind of things. Yeah, if you really strive for continuous delivery and you're shipping 2 times a day, imagine you have to print all these forms, and imagine you have to gather all the evidence. What were the tests? What is all the evidence which is needed? So what you have to do, in my opinion, is that you should strive for continuous compliance. So everything you do, every step you take, whether or not it's Jenkins or your release orchestration tool like XO Release, you should produce the evidence. You should store it somewhere and you should gather it. As well as in your whole pipeline, there's much more than just the test evidence. Yeah, there's the change record. Who of you is using ServiceNow in your organization? 50% of the people should raise their hands. ServiceNow? Yes?
From IBM, you mean it?
Sorry?
From IBM?
No, ServiceNow is from ServiceNow.
Oh.
It's an ITSM tool.
No, then.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. So it's actually ITSM tooling, yeah. So change management, release management, incident management, and a lot of organizations, believe it or not, still require a change record. Yeah. So you have to create a change request, as well as link all the Jira tickets to it, as well as what was the code that was involved, and all the test evidence.
For more information on the XebiaLabs DevOps platform, be sure to visit our website today at www.XebiaLabs.com. Thank you.